John Blake presents The Babes in the Woods Murders, written by Paul Cheston and read by Karl Jenkinson. Preface. This is a story of two mums. One still lives in Brighton, the other moved away many years ago to Surrey. They used to be friends. Their daughters were inseparable. Children, mothers, and grandmothers were always in each other's homes, laughing and chatting. But then they suffered the cruelest blow a random god can bestow when their daughters were abducted, sexually abused, and strangled. They bore that suffering together, and then it split them apart, not just from each other, but wife from husband, and their relatives from their spouses. For 30 years, the mums grieved separately and barely exchanged a word with each other. They were but two of the many, many unrecognised victims of Russell Bishop, whose grief and suffering went unnoticed. But then, after an unceasing 30-year campaign, the chance of justice came along, and suddenly, in a courtroom in London, the two mums could sit together and experience the same emotions they had shared all those years earlier. And little by little, the old kinship was reawakened. When their daughter's killer was finally convicted, they realised that the bond that they had always shared was far, far greater than anything that might have kept them apart. This is their story. But it's not just a book about two mums. It's a book about four brothers too, one of whom was monstrously and falsely accused of killing his own daughter. First by word of mouth, whispers behind his back by strangers and neighbours, and then finally by a desperate killer intent on inflicting the maximum misery because he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The other three brothers make an unusual trio: the ex-con man, the giant, and the former copper. It's a story of how these brothers set out together to right the wrong of a bungled prosecution that let a double child killer loose to strike again. It's also a story about a son who lost his sister and suffered in silence, storing up all the turmoil in his mind. A father who never recovered from what happened to his daughter, and an uncle who fought as hard as anyone for justice. Sadly, all three passed away before Russell Bishop could finally be brought to justice. As this is a story unashamedly written from the victim's viewpoint, I have found little room for insight into the approach of the police or the intricacies of the scientific evidence. Sorry, but those interested can look elsewhere. Included is a guide to the members of the two families who can be easily confused. For instance, there are 2 Karens, 3 Christines, and 2 Mabels. For ease of identification, I have also referred throughout to the Fellows and the Hadaways as they were identified in court, even though Susan Fellows became Susan Iceman, and Michelle Hadaway reverted to her maiden name of Michelle Johnson. But the biggest area of potential confusion lies in the Heffrons and the Fellows. Barry Fellows is the half-brother of Nigel, Kevin, and Ian Heffron. Same mother but different fathers as they explain it. However, they are adamant that they have always been full brothers in their bond and love. Paul Cheston, 2019. Chapter 1. Bedlam. Will the foreman please stand? Breaking the silence, the court clerk's voice was stark, yet sombre. Greying wig, coal-black gown, the white sheet indictment in her left hand. Heart-thumping, the presiding juror rose, confirmed her 4 male and 7 female colleagues were all in agreement, and was told to answer the next question simply guilty or not guilty. Do you find the defendant, Russell Bishop, guilty or not guilty of the murder of Nicola Fellows? A visible pause for breath. Not guilty. Bedlam. Bishop's brothers were on their feet, yelling. His mother Sylvia was in tears.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?